Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Beth, and I just finished reading Everything and More by David Foster Wallace. This is a compact history of infinity. This book is 300 pages long, and it was published in 2003. This is actually, if you guys are regular viewers of the channel, I don't actually read a lot of nonfiction. This is one of his nonfiction works. It essentially just details compact history of infinity. It goes through the different mathematicians and the different proofs that led us to our, well, at this time period, the current understanding of what infinity was and how we treat it within different, mathematical understandings of engineering or just math proofs in general, how other people understand the world and how it contribute to science and technology, those kind of things. I think that it is very much, there's just certain things about the novel that I disliked, certain things I really liked. Personally, I have quite a bit of math knowledge on my side. I do, in fact, think that I am not maybe the most average of readers when it comes to this kind of topic. It was a little bit annoying, and he even said in the beginning how certain things, some of the IYIs or certain of the postscripts, I read all of it because I bought the book, I'm gonna read the whole book, was geared towards people that maybe, didn't have as much math, didn't have as much college math, were kind of limited in that kind of scope, and I appreciate that he said that, but at the same time, I want to say the first, out of 300 pages, the first 200 pages were just... It was a lot of explaining of things I already knew. I'm like, are you really defining a derivative right now and an integral? There came a point, though, where he said the word, didn't even elaborate on it, didn't see how it was used, but it said basically like elliptical integral, and I was like, I'm shutting the book. I'm not reading anymore. I'm done. And I realized, Sarah, he's not actually going to do something with an elliptical integral. You do not have to solve it. And it was kind of off-putting for me. If you don't understand what I just said, I'm so sorry. But that is cursed to me. I don't want to solve that. I use a lot of Infinity. I've taken a lot of signals and processing courses when dealing with electrical engineering, just electrical engineering in general. You do have, an understanding of signals that will kind of just go on for infinity in the different ways you have to basically structure something that you're making that has to run for infinity, or how it's going to, do different transactions on that kind of scale. So for me, I was like, this is an interesting topic. This is something maybe I would like to know more of. The only thing I really found interesting, though, was the beginning of the book and learning, this is probably really stupid of me to say, but just how new a lot of the math I use is. For instance, I thought, calculus was just so ancient with the Greeks and all of these different, things that I use and all these theorems that I use. I'm like, oh, they're all really old. Also, Fourier is brought up a lot in this book, like the Fourier series. You will never see the Fourier transform. I kept waiting for the transform to come in because I use that all the time, or inverse Fourier transform. Does not come in at all. I have to break somebody's heart there. You will not see like Z transforms or Fourier transforms. So I'm sorry. If you were waiting for the book to describe how that came about, it never does. It doesn't even talk about Fourier. And, but essentially, you get to learn how the Greeks saw infinity and how people after it viewed infinity, and how, like, even irrational numbers wasn't something that people wanted to quantify, mathematicians of the age, and just moving forward, all this kind of contradictions between different families of math, different mathematicians, how they slated up, even current day, this is now over 20 years old, but the current understanding of infinity at the time of the book. There were certain things that were described in the book. Like I said, if you know a lot of mathematics, if you're an engineer, or if you're a mathematician, then you are way beyond me, and I do not understand. But a lot of this book was just absolute basics of, I would say, calculus in general, and I think that it really wanted to have a broad spectrum of audience to read this book. And I feel like it was a little too broad, maybe, just because also certain things that were described for math were described in such a way that even I didn't understand. I'm like, I can do derivatives. I know what an integral is. And yet you made me confused on something I already know. You did not describe this in a manner in which I think anyone would understand. And a lot of the book is not, yes, you see some equations here, as you can see. But, like, even when he's talking about limits, I'm like, limits is a relatively, at least for me, I'm sorry if it's not easy for other people, but it's a relatively easy thing for me to understand. And maybe it's because, I've used it so much. But just the way that he described these things made me not understand things that I already know and know how to use and implement. Which is funny. Another kind of motif throughout the book, which I thought was quite interesting to see, is that maybe I view math differently, and maybe that's why it's easier for me than other people. Because I've always just viewed math as, like, completely separate in my brain. Whenever I'm doing math, I'm not thinking of, like, 5 apples. I'm like, 5 is just a number. 5 is what it is. I don't have to, like, visualize it in my brain. I just kind of see, like, okay, I'm doing this. This makes this. This does this. If you give me a bunch of equations, I'm just going to implement it. I'm just going to do it. To a degree, for me, it's like, it's not even a means to an end. When you do math, it's just you're doing this completely different segment of your mind. And it was kind of weird to see that apparently not everyone thinks that way, and that's, like, a big problem throughout the history of math, is that math had to be, like, something very much viewed in the real world. Like, you have to be able to see it geometrically and everything. Well, I just, would just shut my brain off and learn different aspects of mathematics, because just how it is. Which sometimes hurts you, because if you have to implement something to make something, like, if you're trying to make a radar do a certain thing, or having a digital filter, like an IR filter, an FIR filter, which is not in the scope of this book. I'm sorry, I'm now just ranting. If you have it, you need a certain function that needs to be accomplished. You have to put it in terms of real world, but then I, again, personally have to abstract it. So that's just my understanding of math and how I utilize math, and I guess that's different how others utilize math, and that's just a very big motif in this book, is that math has to be removed from actual reality. And I thought that was interesting, because that's just how I view it. I just don't know who's the audience of this book. Maybe someone, because once again, the way he describes certain things, I feel like would confuse someone, because I already know the things and it confused me. I really don't think there's many new concepts in here that were gazed upon. I liked hearing the history of how math, in the first 200 pages, I liked not the IYIs, not describing what, different functions of math are. I liked how you saw that, hey, the Greeks didn't even have the number 0. A lot of people didn't like infinity, and how the jump stops, because, like they said, well, infinity is God, and God is perfect, and we're not going to touch that. Like, just because of religion, all of a sudden they stopped. And just understanding that a lot of things that are basic now, and my understanding of math, didn't come until, like, the 1600s or the 1400s. Just so recent in my mind, if you think on the scope of the world in, terms of mathematics. I always thought that a lot of things I use are so back in ancient times. And just to learn that, especially George Cantor, who is the actual, maybe not George, but G. Cantor, is the mathematician of the book that is, like, his theories, his foundings of infinity, is basically the focus. You don't even hit that until the last 100 pages of the novel, but that is the focus of this entire book. And I think that it just really struggled on who the audience was. I don't know how else to put it. Just if you like David Foster Wallace, his writing is still good. It's still great. It's still in his tone of voice. He definitely has a lot of fourth wall breaking, because, shocker, he's talking about mathematics and trying to make you understand what he's talking about. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's great. I don't think I'll ever read it again. I think this is, who the audience for this book is? This is definitely for someone that just finished Calc 3. Or maybe who's in math class. Like, this is somebody who's still in college, maybe even grad school. You are in the thick of it. You read this book because you're like, oh, this is a nice refresher. This is nice to know about. This is just a little fun. I think, or maybe even in the middle of calcs, I think this would be perfect because, like, oh, I see it in a different way and how it can be utilized and when infinity is. I think that is where this book maybe will shine. But personally, I don't think I think maybe I wanted to like it more. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was great. I was expecting more. I wanted more of that. Maybe that feel when he was talking about the Greeks and how they didn't even have the number 0. That is something that's stuck in my mind after reading this book. I finished this a few days ago, but because of the holiday season, I was a little late. So if you're in college and you like math, read the book. I think you'll enjoy it. Otherwise, yeah, maybe skip it. Anyway, I hope you enjoy my review and have a good one.